Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, and my friends, we are here today to talk about fighting game characters. And fighting game characters, frankly, are a ridiculous bunch. From a drunken kung fu master searching for the perfect drink, to a former drug addict turned white ninja African president, to your average Canadian citizen. Fighting game characters are a wild bunch, to say the least, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the lives and times of one of the most legendary fighting game characters of all time, and that is Terry Bogard. Now, who is Terry Bogard, just in case you don't know? Well, he is the mascot of SNK, and SNK has made a lot of the most influential and important fighting games of all time. Fatal Fury, Art of Fighting, King of Fighters, Samurai Showdown, and more, and when it's all said and done, they choose Terry to represent them. So now, knowing he's a pretty important dude, let's talk about him. One thing to note about Terry Bogard is Terry is prolific. I'm sure you've probably seen Terry Bogard in Smash Brothers, and that's kind of a big deal, right? He's also been in games like Fighting EX Lair, heck, even a gender-bent version of Terry is in SNK Heroines. And just a fun little fact that SNK Heroines is actually canonical to the actual story of King of Fighters. It actually takes place after King of Fighters 14, and some of the events therein, like say the New Faces team resurrecting, are totally canon. So Girl Terry, in a way, is also canon. So suffice to say anyways, Terry Bogard, pretty popular guy. How did he get so popular? Terry first appears in 1991 with the rise of the Fatal Fury franchise. 1991 is also the year that Street Fighter II came out, very big deal, and the head of the Fatal Fury project was actually one of the people responsible for the very first Street Fighter game, and they kind of viewed it as a spiritual sequel. And also to note, before it became its own franchise, technically Fatal Fury is the original King of Fighters. Fatal Fury would go on to be a hit. It would spawn many sequels and sub-games, and through it all, the face of this franchise is Terry Bogard. Terry's original design was meant to be a bit at odds with kind of the standard fighting game protagonist, as due to a certain someone setting the fighting game scene on fire, everyone kind of copied, and most fighting game protagonists were simply the Japanese karate guy. So Terry, a white character with kind of more of a street clothes kind of look, was made instead. And with Terry's relatively simple look with his iconic cap, you know what? Turns out it was a home run. The look for the most part has stayed the same over the years with small changes. Sometimes you can see the sleeves of his t-shirt, sometimes there is full-length arms on the jacket. Most of the time there's no jacket arms and he's got the t-shirt cut off, just so we can see the big old biceps. And very rarely we are treated with bomber jacket Terry. No hat, this is kind of like middle-aged Terry, only really appearing in Garou, Mark of the Wolves, and in King of Fighters 2003 and King of Fighters 11. In the upcoming King of Fighters 15, Terry will be rocking the classic biceps out look. So before we get to the big lore dump, let's talk about how he plays in a lot of the games, and honestly, he's a really strong all-rounder. If you're the kind of guy who likes a little bit of everything, you know, like a Ryu, he definitely is that. He's got a classic fireball, the burn knuckle is a tool to get in and can be made safe on block out of times, crack shoot goes over a lot of stuff, and we have rising tackle, which is analogous to a dragon punch, as it's usually quite invulnerable. Terry also, depending on the games, has the power dunk. He's a really big fan of basketball. Terry also has what I would consider a slightly better than average set of normals, so he's definitely no slouch in neutral and in footsies. And he is also the master of the infamous Buster Wolf special move. Despite it being one of his most famous moves and one of the most famous moves in fighting game history, he actually did not get it till later on in his lifespan in 1999 with Garou Mark of the Wolves. That actually marks the first appearance of this iconic move. After its first appearance though, it's become a staple of his moveset ever since. So now let's talk the lore of Terry Bogard. So a lot of what makes Terry go happens specifically in the Fatal Fury franchise. The King of Fighters games, while he's certainly there, he's not as important of a factor in the greater plot because, hey, that's other characters' jobs. But that said, Fatal Fury, there's quite a bit, and it is said that a lot of heroes are only as good as their villain, and for Terry, he's got one MFer of a villain in one Geese Howard. So before we can even get into Terry's story here, we have to first talk about Southtown, where a lot of the Art of Fighting, Fatal Fury, and sometimes even King of Fighters story takes place, as that is where Terry grew up. And Southtown kinda sucks, like, just to be frank, right? It would put Gotham to shame back in its worst days. Southtown used to be ultra crime infested, just mobs, mafia, gangsters, everything, and it was bad until one person showed up. But the thing is, on the surface it made it better, but it became even worse under the core because that person who showed up was Geese Howard. And technically Geese, he cleaned up the rubbish, right? But the thing is, he just took all the best bits of all the mobs and mafias and gangsters and basically took them all under his wing. So how does this affect Terry? Well, Terry grew up as a street rat, basically. Terry and his brother Andy were homeless orphans until Jeff Bogard adopted them. Jeff Bogard, great dad. But the thing is, he has his own past, and part of that past is intricately tied with one Geese Howard. You see, Geese and Jeff were both trained by the same person, one Tung Fu Ru, and they were both trained in the art of Hakkyoku Saiken, and we're looking for a successor to the martial arts style, and Jeff was picked over Geese. Geese, well, didn't handle that the best, classic story, right? But he didn't immediately do something about it. In fact, he went back home to the States, where he formed his crime syndicate. The thing is, naturally, if Jeff adopted Terry and Andy, that turns out he went back to the States as well, right? And as soon as Geese found out that Jeff went back to the States, then he kinda did something about it. So Geese sent his henchmen off to kill Jeff, and they did, and kinda did it right in front of Terry and Andy, two very impressionable youths. So suffice to say, this is basically where the revenge part of the story comes into play, because Terry and Andy want to kick Geese's ass. At which point, well, enter Fatal Fury. So before the actual tournament, they have some growing up to do, right? So Andy heads off to Japan, mixes himself up with Mai Shiranui, all that kind of stuff. Terry learns a bit more just kind of streetwise style, right? They know some of what their father has taught them, but they gotta strike it out on their own. So for Terry, just street fighting is the way to go. Eventually, Geese announces the second King of Fighters tournament, because technically the first King of Fighters tournament is Art of Fighting 2. And by now, the Bogard brothers, they're old enough to fight, and they are absolutely ready to get their revenge. And you know what? Terry, he wins the tournament. He beats Billy Kane, that is Geese Howard's right-hand man, throughout many of the games. And hey, awesome, I am the King of Fighters. And yeah, you won the tournament, but there's still the deal of dealing with Geese, right? So Terry is brought in to face Geese, and it is time for the fated battle. Terry looking for revenge for his adopted father, which Geese killed. And how does that turn out? Well, Terry totally kicks Geese's ass. Simple as that, right? Good guy wins. And he kicks his ass all the way off the top of the building they're on. Terry not in the help the enemy learn their lesson kind of business. He's got revenge on mind, and revenge is what he gets. And with that said, after the fall, Geese Howard dies in the hospital 3 hours afterwards. And hey, that's it. Or is it? In Fatal Fury 2, turns out this guy called Wolfgang Krauser, the Emperor of Darkness, shows up, and he was Geese's half-brother. So what happens? Well, Terry just kicks his ass. That's really all there is to it. I wish I could dress it up and gussy it up for the sake of the video, but it's that cut and that short. Terry just whips him, and then Krauser goes kills himself. So definitely not one of the more memorable villains in SNK history, but you know what? Fatal Fury 3 comes around, and it turns out Geese Howard maybe not as dead as everyone thought. So he very literally had an ancient Chinese secret to survive falling 500 feet to his death. And that's kind of the plot of Fatal Fury 3, is these mystical scrolls, and everyone's looking for the scrolls. The thing is, at least on the Terry Bogard end of things, as far as the scrolls go, he could not care less. He doesn't even know what they are. Geese, however, Geese showing up, Terry wants to put him right back in the dirt. And Terry tries. He does indeed get to meet up with Geese Howard yet again, and they have yet another climactic battle. Billy also wants revenge on Terry, because Terry whipped his butt in the first Fatal Fury game, but for Billy, sorry, not meant to be. This is a big boy fight, so you gotta sit this one out. Terry gets the upper edge on Geese and manages to win the fight as everything burns down around them. However, Geese, the usual megalomania bit here. Haha, you beat me, but did you really? And I'm going to use this lovely cover of fire and everything burning around me to kind of make my grand escape. So with this here, Geese, he kind of gets off scot-free, and Terry, he's got to deal with this whole scroll deal, which once again he doesn't even really know about, and he also will run into Yamazaki. Now, who is Yamazaki? Well, Yamazaki is Ryuji Yamazaki, and he's one of the people helping get this whole scroll business and scroll plot moving along. Basically, they're the scrolls of an ancient Chinese emperor, and it's bad news for whoever gets it, right? And not directly linked here, but Yamazaki later on in KOF lore would go on to be one of the 8 heads of the Orochi, who is a very, very big deal in KOF, to say the least. But the thing is, of the 8 heads of the Orochi, he's basically useless, as he's completely insane and the rest of them don't want anything to do with him. Anyways, Terry totally whips Yamazaki, because of course he does, states, I don't know what this scroll stuff is all about, because he's not following the main plot thread, because he's really only concerned about Geese. Terry goes on to meet the Jin brothers, who are kind of the cause of all this. And why are they the Jin brothers? Because that's their name, fool. Legitimately doesn't matter too much. The plot of Fatal Fury 3 never expands past this. They're 2 mean little manlets, and Terry kicks their ass. And after he beats them, they die, basically. So, enough said about those guys. Let's get back to Geese. How about it? So, enter Real Bout Fatal Fury, which is basically a new start for the franchise, although it's a direct plot continuation. Geese, not too pleased at losing in Fatal Fury 3, throws another tournament, and this time we're going to settle it all the way for real, actually. And the thing about this one is, this one actually is for all the marbles. And this is kind of where there's a plot break between the King of Fighters and Fatal Fury, because Geese loses again. So if you're a Terry fan, awesome. A Geese fan, maybe not. But here's the thing. So Terry delivers the final blow, and Geese goes careening over the top yet again. We're kind of retreading that territory, but with different results. So Geese goes overboard, and you know what, Terry, this time around, he actually tries to save him. He legitimately makes an effort to save him. Didn't the first time, right? But Geese, not having it, and this time he laughs as he plummets to his death. And in the Fatal Fury timeline now, that is the true death of Geese Howard. He will never appear ever again. Once again, KOF and Fatal Fury kind of have a split timeline here. So if you see the credits here now, though, there's one piece of baggage left over. You might recall Terry himself was an orphan, right? He was adopted by Jeff Bogard. And little did he know, he orphaned someone else. He orphaned one Rock Howard. So Geese had a son, and Terry turned him into an orphan by killing his father. And, well, basically, once again, having been adopted himself, he mans up and he takes the kid in. And he basically raises Rock Howard as his own. By all accounts, does pretty well raising him. He teaches him all sorts of stuff. Teaches him basketball, teaches him martial arts, everything he knows, and also what his father taught him, he passes it all along. And from this point, we take a bit of a time skip.
Certainly, they existed. Those blinded by ambition. Those consumed with vengeance. But here, they do not exist. Only winners and losers here. For here, the mighty rule.
Now we enter Garou, Mark of the Wolves, set a somewhat indeterminate amount in the future, but enough for Rock to go from a kid to a young adult, and basically this is now Rock Howard's story. Terry is certainly still here, obviously enough, right? Rocking his new bomber jacket look, but all things said and done, he's there as the wise old mentor role. His journey as the main character has sort of concluded. A lot of what Garou is a new generation of fighters kind of deal, right? Terry is the only returning character from the Fatal Fury franchise in this game. Everyone else is brand new, and you know what? Most fighting games, when they do the whole new generation thing, they kind of screw it up, and Garou is one of the very few examples where it actually totally worked out. There's a new villain also related to Geese Howard in a way. It's Geese's brother-in-law. And it's kind of dealing just, okay, Rock, what are you all about? That kind of stuff. Because Rock's got some weird powers himself, and that may have come from Geese, or it may have come from his mother, who was Geese's wife. We don't know. All we know is Terry is there to help Rock find his future forward. As far as this timeline goes, this is the stop of the timeline. You can almost consider it like the Street Fighter 3 in that way, right? There's been Street Fighters after Street Fighter 3, but the plot has never progressed past Street Fighter 3 because it's the furthest in the timeline. Same deal here for the most part. Now, we talked about how there's a bit of a split between the Fatal Fury timeline and the King of Fighters timeline, and this is definitely where it is most apparent, as this takes way past any King of Fighters game, or conversely, it is just simply a different universe than King of Fighters. Because in King of Fighters, Geese is still alive. It is that simply put. Geese rarely shows up properly in King of Fighters, but Geese is alive, and he is even in the most recent game, King of Fighters 14. Now, that all said, let's move on to King of Fighters, because Terry and the Southtown crew are stalwarts in the franchise. They are always around when there is a King of Fighters to be had. The issue here, at least for Terry, is they're not that important plot-wise. For a lot of the big epic moments of KOF's story, things like Iori losing his mind to the riot of the blood, right? Terry and crew, well, they were around somewhere. They didn't directly deal with it. The New Faces team revealing their grand plan and showing up with their kick-ass music.
Hey, come on.
Round one.
Yeah, well, that wasn't Terry there. That was Kyo, Iori, and Chizuru, because Terry's not the main character of King of Fighters. Same deal with Orochi. Terry's never met the guy. The most he's ever done with Orochi is interact with Yamazaki, and well, Yamazaki doesn't really care about the Orochi stuff either. The only real thing that Terry is focused on in the King of Fighters games is where's Geese and what is Geese doing, because once again, Geese is very much alive, even if he doesn't show up too often. His main appearances in KOF that are canon and not like a dream game kind of deal are KOF 96 and KOF 14, so pretty big gap in appearances there. When it comes to things like the Ness saga, he really is not that much of a factor in it. Ash Crimson saga, that is very much more Orochi stuff, and Kyo and Iori, so he doesn't really have anything to do with it either. Suffice to say, he just shows up because he likes to fight, right? And he's a pretty good martial artist. Now, we actually know the canonical winners of every King of Fighters tournament to date, and Terry's not in them, so therefore he does eventually lose every point at some point in the KOF tournaments, although you gotta assume he gets pretty far in the bracket. The only KOF tournaments he's won are the KOF tournaments of Fatal Fury, because it's also King of Fighters. And in that regard, he's won Fatal Fury 1, Fatal Fury 2, and Real Bout Fatal Fury. Fatal Fury 3, he's technically the winner, but there wasn't a tournament in that game. So what does the future hold for Terry Bogard? So as of the time of me making this video, King of Fighters 15 is not out yet, but hey, it is coming, and Terry is obviously making an appearance. Will he be a big plot mover and shaker? Well, probably not, knowing where the story is going, but the one big thing about the story, the biggest thing about the story, going straight from KOF 14 is the dead can come back to life. And that said, there is a very direct hint in one of the endings of King of Fighters 14 that one of the people that might be coming back to life is Jeff Bogard. Who fully knows? Because I don't, but we already know stuff like Ash Crimson will be back from the dead, as per King of Fighters 14 ending, and as per SNK Heroines, which is canon, the New Faces team is also back from the dead. So Jeff Bogard, maybe. And in this shot, he's definitely rocking his own hat and that iconic Garo Mark of the Wolves bomber jacket. So maybe Terry's future is a reunion with his long dead father. I guess we'll have to see, because the way plot is shaping up for 15, thanks to all the dead people coming back, literally anything can happen. That all said, I guess we're reaching the end of the video. So for everyone who's watching, thank you very much for watching. If you could leave a like, it is sincerely appreciated. These kind of videos take a lot longer to do than the usual kind of videos I make. So anything you can do to help out would be appreciated on that front. And other than that, if you want to see more characters covered, let me know what kind of characters you would like to get this kind of treatment. And I guess we're now done. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well. Go out and play some King of Fighters.